It's 7:03. I'll call the meeting to order with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Being remote tonight, if we have any votes or anything, we're going to have John call the roll call since he's in the building. That's okay with everybody. So John, if you want to take roll call for the meeting.
Here.
Director Gerard. Pardon me, Garrett.
Here.
Director Hackett.
Here.
Homestead.
Here.
Director Lang.
Here.
Director Rory.
Here.
All present.
All right, let the record reflect that all board members are here and accounted for. Moving on to approval of agenda.
I'll move that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have Ryan, seconded by Mary Lang.
Yep. So any discussion? It was moved by Director Hofstad and seconded by Director Lang to approve the agenda as presented. Any other discussion? If not, call the roll.
Director Bowman.
Aye.
Director Jarrett.
Aye.
Director Hackett.
Aye.
Director Homestead.
Aye.
Director Lang.
Aye.
Director Rory.
Aye.
6-0 in favor of, no abstentions.
Let the record reflect the motion passes. Moving on, discussion items, action items, superintendent search. I believe, Barb, that's what we have you here for.
That is correct. I'm really glad to join you tonight. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. It's good to meet all of you if we haven't had a chance to connect at MSBA events to this point, but we're very much looking forward to working with the Royalton School Board on the superintendent search. So thank you for selecting us, and we've got a lot of great work ahead of us. So is it all right if we just dive right into working through tonight's agenda?
Yep, that's what we're here for.
Great, thank you. Could I ask for just one moment for folks to tell me your name, even your first name's fine, and how long you've served on the board? That would be very helpful in whatever order you'd like to go. So your name and how long you've served.
Why don't we just go in the alphabetical order that we're used to here?
Sure. My name is Tyler Ballman, and I've been here for just over a month now.
Welcome, welcome.
Hi, my name is Russ Garrett. I have been with the board. This is going to be my third year.
Thank you.
I'm Director Hackett. Been on the board for 7 years now, and then chair. So,
Thank you.
I'm Ryan Hofstad, my first month as well.
Welcome to you as well, Ryan.
Good evening. I'm Mary Lang. I served on this board for 8 years in the past, and now I'm serving this is my second year.
Great. Thank you.
Attorney, Barb.
I'm Angela, and I'm also brand new first month.
Welcome to you, Angela. All right, great. Thank you so much.
So just one thing, Barb, here is, so we have a pretty new board and we're not used to working together yet. So
Okay.
I'm just hoping that this can be used as not only as a superintendent search, but as a team building exercise. And I really want us to start moving together as a board. So through all these meetings in this process, I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen. So.
Great. That's very good to know. Thank you so much. I would say that this will give you the opportunity because every step of this process involves the full board. One of MSBA's primary components of the superintendent search is that the board takes ownership of all of the decisions. We're here as a guide. We make recommendations. We share with you best practices. We keep you in your lane when it comes to things like data privacy and the open meeting law. And yet you as a board truly have to own this process. We'll never tell you what to do. We'll make some suggestions. We'll answer a lot of questions, but ultimately it's going to come down to the board. Ideally, also, you will be able to reach consensus on all of the decisions, and you'll be able to work with one unified voice. I'll tell you right up front, it's difficult to do a superintendent search with a divided board. If this were a board that consistently voted 3-3 on any issues, then we were going to have a long road ahead of us. But if you can really truly listen to your fellow board members' points of view, if you can ask one another questions, if you can hold discussions in a public forum in a respectful and thoughtful way, I think you'll get exactly what you're looking for, which is not only the right leader for your district, but a great opportunity to learn to work together with a nice balance of tenured board members as well as some newcomers. So I think it's a great opportunity, and we're looking forward to being a part of that. So thank you. I myself have been at MSBA for almost 2 years now. I'm the Director of Leadership Development and Executive Search. I work exclusively in the areas of executive search and superintendent evaluation, as well as leadership development. And it is something I have absolutely enjoyed to the fullest. It's been a great experience. I love what I get to do. Leadership is really important to me. Prior to this opportunity, I worked at the YWCA in Mankato, a nonprofit, as their executive director. And I coordinated and led a lot of leadership development programs there as well. So the opportunity to help school boards such as yourselves find their next superintendent is a really great fit for me. I also get to work with a lot of wonderful service providers, one of whom is going to be very involved in your search. His name is Lee Warren. Lee is a retired superintendent. He has been in education for over 40 years, and he has become a very trusted advisor to me as we work through a huge volume of searches this year. And he'll be stepping in to lead the search following the planning meeting, but I will always be available and working with Lee behind the scenes as well. I think Randy and Russ, you had a chance to meet Lee yesterday, correct? Okay, great. And the rest of you, you'll become very familiar with Lee during the process as well. He does a wonderful job on superintendent searches and is extremely great at answering questions and anticipating what it is you might be needing to know next. So we're both looking forward to working with the board on the search. This process typically takes about 2 to 3.5 months. We'll talk about timeline tonight. That's one of the biggest things we're hoping to accomplish, to really solidify when you're going to conduct what steps of the process, and even down to what time are you going to be having those meetings. So we'll kick that off. Timeline, hiring criteria is very important. And I want to thank all of you for filling out that survey regarding the hiring criteria and the qualifications for your next superintendent. Because you did that so promptly, I was able to also create a draft brochure to include in your packet, because we want to be able to publish that vacancy brochure immediately upon posting this position. So thanks to all of your work in advance, and thanks to John for information he sent me to flesh out the rest of the brochure. We're going to be covering that tonight as well. We'll talk about stakeholder involvement, another very important part of the process, and that is different for every board. Depending upon the stakeholders in your community and within your buildings, you might want to structure your stakeholder input a little bit differently. It's an important part of what we do, and yet I want to be real clear that the only hiring committee is the school board. All right, semantics are very important. So no matter how you involve stakeholders in the process, whether it's through the survey, through observing your interviews, providing input, there is no hiring committee. There's the school board. And then there are stakeholders who provide input or who serve in an advisory capacity to you. So you don't want to give away your authority as a board to make this decision. It rests solely with the 6 of you, going back to ownership of the process. So that's super important. We'll also tie up some loose ends tonight about the process, what's going to happen moving forward. And we usually are done in about an hour and a half, 2 hours tops, but I want to make sure that we also answer every single question that you might have. So I plan to stay here as long as it takes to make sure that every member of the Royalton board is comfortable with what has happened tonight and what's going to happen next. So that's a review of the process. Are there any questions before we dive into the timeline, first of all, from anyone? All right, seeing none. Great. If you would turn to the Royalton Public Schools Superintendent Search Timeline, we're going to start with that. We are already at item number 1, February 10th. This is the planning meeting. It's where we will talk about timeline, criteria, procedures, positioning in the market, and your stakeholder involvement. So that's what we're going to cover tonight. We are suggesting that the stakeholder survey be opened as early as Friday. We do want to get started as soon as we can. It is high season for superintendent search right now, so we can't dawdle. We don't have the luxury of 6 months to spend on this search. We really do want to get going to ensure that you have a good candidate pool by the time. We're also suggesting that we post this as early as Monday. And that again, feels like it's pretty quick, but because of all the homework you did in advance, I think we're really, really close to being able to post the vacancy brochure. We have some details on it to iron out tonight, but we are suggesting this be posted February 15th, and we would post it through March 22nd. That would be the application deadline. I think that's about 5 weeks or so, 4.5, 5 weeks. That is plenty of time for folks to throw their hat in the ring for your superintendency. If you are only wanting to have this open 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'd probably recommend against that because it's a lot of work to apply for the position of superintendent. Folks need to be serious about this. If they want to be considered, there's a lot of paperwork to fill out. They have to upload all kinds of information, transcripts, licenses, references, cover letters. There's a lot to it. So we're going to encourage you to consider that 4 to 5 week time frame. Any longer than that, I think, is really unnecessary, and it'll set you back too far so that you might be making an offer to a candidate down the line, if it's too long, who has already been offered another position and might pull out of the running right when you're ready to make an offer. So I think that's the sweet spot. If you folks are comfortable with March 22nd, that's the deadline we're suggesting for your application. I do want to visit very briefly about the stakeholder listening session survey. It says to be determined. Pre-pandemic, we would spend a day or two in your district conducting focus groups. The listening sessions are also focus groups. We'd meet with staff, members of the community to hear from them what they're looking for in a superintendent. And this is one instance where I think the pandemic has had a silver lining. We used to schedule these focus groups with districts all the time. And I can't tell you how many times we scheduled a focus group and we had maybe 2 people show up. Sometimes we had 0. That's a lot of work to go through when no one shows up. And there was another time we had a good crowd. We had about 20 people come to a community focus group, but no one wanted to go on the record with their opinions and what they thought. So I intended to do a lot of listening, but we only had 4 people who actually spoke up and shared their interests and concerns about the qualifications of the next superintendent. With the pandemic, though, we've taken those listening sessions online. The first way we tried to do it last spring was this way. We'd have Zoom meetings with people logged on, and I would ask a question and wait for people to speak up. And the same thing happened. People didn't want to speak up. I had 30 staff members in a focus group one time, and literally 3 people volunteered their thoughts and opinions. Everyone else was lurking and listening and not wanting to go on the record with their opinions. So we moved it to surveys. Now we're asking those listening session comments in surveys, and our response rate has skyrocketed. Instead of maybe getting a total of 20 to 30 people responding, we're seeing 50 to 100 people because it's available 24/7 on their computers, or they can respond, and they can respond anonymously. Because I think there is that fear of going on the record with your thoughts and concerns about the next superintendent. So I think the transparency of being anonymous and the ability to fill out the survey online has greatly increased responses to those listening sessions. Now, we still want to have the questions available in hard copy format, and I'll work with your district office to make sure that those are there. There are people who simply don't have access to a computer or don't want to use a computer to fill out a survey. So hard copies have to be available for folks like that. And also because of ADA requirements for those folks who can't use computers because of ADA disabilities, they'll be able to use them through a hard copy and fill the surveys out that way. So I put it as to be determined because we're going to circle back to stakeholders in a little bit, and we'll talk about whether you want to try to conduct focus groups in Royalton or if you'd like those questions folded into the survey that we're thinking we'll launch this Friday. Long explanation because it's a really big topic and it ties into stakeholders, which again, are really important. Also, please interrupt me while I'm speaking. If you have a question, I don't want you to have to wait until the end of the evening. So if something triggers a question, raise your hand or shout. I can't see too many of you in the big room there, but just make sure I know you have a question and I'll be sure to address it. Okay? The first meeting that we need you to pull out your calendars and schedule is the interview training. This is about a 2-hour meeting. It's where Lee will walk you through what to expect during the interviews, how to ask the questions you need to ask, how to ask legal questions, and how to discuss the candidates in a public forum. Absolutely every step of the superintendent process needs to be conducted according to the open meeting law. That means nothing is done in committee and nothing is done in private. It's all done out in the open. So how you debate the candidates' qualifications, how you critique their interviews is really important because there are people watching, not just your constituents, but potentially the candidates themselves. So during interview training, there are a lot of questions we'll answer. We have a whole set of probably 30 to 40 pages of tips that we give you. And that meeting we are suggesting occurs March 8th, 9th, 16th, or 17th. So I'm not sure, Chair, how you want to select a date, if you want to open it up for discussion, but those are 4 dates that Lee
Yeah,
had.
we can just open that up for discussion. I had all those days are okay with me. Somebody just pick one and we'll just try to pick one of those days. I would say the earlier the better.
I'm good on the 8th.
Yeah, I'd agree that the 8th would be good. It's a Monday.
I'm not good on the 8th. I'm having surgery that day. However, the 9th would work.
9th works for me.
One thing with the 9th, I don't know if this is applicable in your community, but that's Township Election Day. If you're going to be having any township elections on March 9th, you cannot meet between 6 and 8 p.m. You can meet before 6 or you can meet after 8. If you don't have any township elections, no worries. You can meet whenever you want to.
Sure, we have some.
I'm sure there is. Got a lot of townships.
I think there will be.
So that means it's the 11th then?
The next choice is the 16th, PM.
And 16th or 17th are still in plenty of time. The applications don't close until the 22nd. So the interview training will be fresh in your mind as you're reviewing applications. So the 16th and 17th would work perfectly fine if those dates are better for folks.
March 16th works for me.
Works for me.
Works for me.
Works for David too.
Thank you.
Mary, does that work for you?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. I think that's everybody chimed in. So I think that's the first decision we came to is March 16th. So
Great. What time? This will be a special meeting, so you will have to post it at least 3 days in advance. All of these meetings need to be posted.
We do 6.
6.
I was gonna say, does the 6 o'clock work for everybody?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not hearing any objections, so I'm guessing 6 o'clock is good.
Great. Thank you so much. The deadline is March 22nd, which means the very next day, March 23rd, MSBA starts reviewing all of the applications. The first thing we do is to look for completed applications only. We're not going to forward information to the board until we ensure that they are completed. If they're missing a license, missing transcripts, if they're missing something in the applications, we will not forward that information to you. That is why the board doesn't see the applications till March 24th. All right, we spend the 23rd weaving through them. Yes, Randy.
So I do have a question about that. What if, and I know what the preliminary survey was said and everything, but what if somebody came with less than a full license and was working to it? Would they be disqualified from this search or not?
Nope, they would be considered because we ask a question in the application. Do you have a Minnesota superintendent's license? Yes or no? If they check yes, they have to upload it. If they check no, we say, please explain. And there's a couple of scenarios. Maybe they're working toward the superintendent's license and they will have it by July 1st. So they definitely should stay in the running. Maybe they have an out-of-state license and they're in process of applying for a provisional license with the Minnesota Licensing Authority. So there are times where it doesn't quite fit in the perfect little box of a Minnesota superintendent's license. But if they can explain that they're in process or there's a reason they don't currently have one, they remain in contention without question.
Right, there's a question I had on that, so.
Yep, great question. So we will look at those then from the 23rd to the 31st. You'll look at those from the 24th to the 31st. You'll get them one day after us. You will see every single application that's completed. We will spend our week digging into who we consider the top 6 to 8 candidates that have thrown their hat in the ring for your job. Our service providers, we have a team of folks that goes through all of those applications initially and gives every one of them yes, yes, maybe, maybe, no, maybe, or no. And then we have a meeting where we get together and talk about them. And there's usually a couple that rise to the top immediately. And then there's some on the bubble where we think these could be really good candidates. Let's talk it out. So we take a look at all their backgrounds, how well they fit the hiring criteria that you have developed. We look at the reference letters. We talk to each other about our networks and who knows who. And we come up with about 6 to 8 people that we'd like to dig deeper into. So then we spend the rest of that week calling those candidates and doing a pre-interview on the phone with them. We also call their references, talk to those folks. We do a quick social media sweep on everybody until we have solidified what we consider to be the best 6 candidates for Royalton. So we'll then bring those to you at the finalist selection meeting, but you will have seen everyone. And it's possible that our top 6 don't exactly mirror what each of you as board members have selected. So you're welcome to ask us questions about candidates that aren't in our top 6. Keep in mind that at this point, data privacy is extremely important. When you're reviewing these applications, you have got to hold in confidence the names of every single person you're reviewing. Okay, now you'll be able to review them electronically or in hard copy. We will give you access to our database so that you can log in at any point and look through all of the applications. Or if you prefer, we'll work with your district office to have one set of hard copies at the district office. But you have to go into the district office, look at them in a separate room with no one around you, leave, and then they have to be locked up again. We cannot risk the names of these people being made public. So you can't take copies out to your car. You can't make copies and put them in your purse or anything like that. You are bound by data practices to keep those names confidential. So even when we're talking about the candidates, MSBA is going to share with you our recommendations are candidate A, B, C, F, H, and M. And then when you ask us questions, you might say, well, what about candidate D? And we will answer, oh, candidate D did not meet the criteria of as well as the other candidates or something. It'll feel kind of strange because you need to be pretty vague with your questions, and we're bound by data privacy laws as well. So our responses might seem a little vague, but you'll know in advance. The day of the meeting, we'll send you our 6 so you can look them up and refresh your memories about who's who. And then you can come prepared with your questions. Once you've discussed and maybe as a board agreed upon pretty quickly, or maybe it takes you a while, who you want to interview, someone will make the motion. I make a motion to interview candidates B, C, F, G, H, and I. Someone makes the second, you pass it, then and only then, either the chair or MSBA will read the names out loud of those, we'll say 6 people. You could interview more or you could interview fewer, but 6 is a round number we usually use. That's when those names become public. Now, everybody else who's in contention, who tried to get the job, has to remain forever and ever confidential. You're used to confidential issues as board members, and this is one of the most important. It gets particularly sticky when there's an internal candidate, and sometimes there is. Someone in the staff has their superintendent's license or is working toward it and is interested. They may apply for this position. You may have 2 people or 3 people. Now, despite what they're telling people, because they might be telling everybody, I'm trying to get the superintendent job, I'm so excited. You as board members cannot confirm or deny that they're in the running. If they're not selected for an interview, you can't comment to anyone that that person was not selected. Does that make sense? You have to treat everything with the utmost confidentiality. And this is part of the interview training, so it'll become much more comfortable for you as you move forward. But the only time these names become public is after you've selected your finalists. Okay, so that's going to happen potentially March 31st, April 1, 2, 5, or 6. That's when that meeting will occur. I will give you a heads up if you're planning on meeting at 6 p.m. again. April 1st is Monday, Thursday, part of the Easter holiday, and April 2nd is Good Friday. So for some boards, if they're doing anything on April 1st or 2nd, they're doing it during the day to avoid conflicts in the evening. But when you're looking at this date, we're doing interview training on the 16th. From starting the 24th, you're looking at all these applications and we're doing our due diligence. Do you want to then meet to determine your finalists on March 31st, 1st, 2nd, 5th, or 6th? Do any of those days ring better for you than others?
I would throw out the 31st to avoid the Easter holiday, if that works with everybody.
I agree, Tyra.
I'm good on the 31st.
Sounds good.
I'm good on the 31st also.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. works for me. Does it work for everybody?
Yep.
All right, awesome. The 31st at 6 p.m. We will at that point also review for you questions that you've selected to ask your candidates on the first round of interviews. We'll review with you the schedule. Lots of things get very busy at this point in time. So then the question is, when do you want to conduct the first round of interviews? We're April 5, 6, 7, or 8. Now, I would recommend you pick 2 days to conduct the first round of interviews. If you're going to interview 6 people, not only do you have to interview each of them and they run an hour, typically we say 1 hour is a good time frame. You also have your deliberations after the 6 candidates. And this is where you discuss the strengths of each of them and who you are recommending that moves on to the second round. That can take 20 minutes if all of you feel the same about these top candidates, or it can take 2 hours.
Do you,
2 days.
do you recommend to deliberate after each candidate or after you've done several candidates?
After you've done everybody.
Okay.
So if you do 6 candidates, you don't deliberate until after the 6th person has finished.
Okay.
And so if you do 3 in one day and 3 the next day plus deliberations, that tends to be the model most boards go with. If you try to do all 6 plus deliberations in one day, you're going to be exhausted. It's going to be very hard for you to remember interview 1 during the 6th interview. It's very, very difficult. You couldn't do it. We're just cautioning against it because you got a lot of energy the first 2 interviews and you've got 4 more, but it's a lot.
Well, I know that the problem, I was involved in one before, and the problem is that's the first time you're seeing everybody, but it's not the first time the board is asking the questions. And by the time you get to the 3rd or 4th candidate, there's other questions that you'd like to ask. And I know you'll cover it in training, but it's just so hard to keep a fresh mind sometimes. So yeah, I would say 3 is a big day.
It is. And you have to ask each candidate the same questions. You can't ask follow-up questions or throw new questions to candidates 4, 5, and 6. It needs to be a level playing field. So the interview questions that you do come up with, and we'll help you with that. We've got about 172 questions that we'll pick from, help you winnow it down to 15 to 18. You have to ask everyone the same questions to ensure that it's fair and it's level.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 days that work better for you between April 5th and 8th.
Well, I'm just thinking that does the 5th and 6th work for everybody? I know the 6th will probably, I don't know, that
I was
should
gonna
be.
say, what about time, Randy? How much
What's
time
that?
does it take, Barb? Are you thinking 4 hours?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking we could probably schedule like a strong 3 hours for the first one and probably four hours for the second night because of deliberations, or afternoon, or perhaps one should be during the day and one should be in the evening, because you don't know what your candidates' schedules will be. And I understand and trust that everybody works, but in order to widen the field so anybody can feel like they can, we've got to offer both. I feel. Does anybody else agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree with structuring the time. I can take on the work, so I can be flexible.
And that's why I asked the question, because obviously it's not all going to be in the evening. So you have to be aware of that when you're setting up the day. Sorry, Barb.
Oh, that's okay. If you start the first day at 4 o'clock, you'd have interviews at 4 o'clock, 5:15, because we always put a buffer of 15 minutes in there. 4 o'clock, 5:15, 6:30, and 7:30. You'd be done at 7:30. The first time you'd be done at 7:30. The next day, if you start at 4 o'clock, you'd have an interview at 4, 5:15, 6:30, and then you'd need to take a break from 7:30 to 8 because MSBA has to tabulate some of the evaluation tools that you're using. So you wouldn't begin deliberations till at least 8 or 8:15. And if you deliberate for 2 hours, you're getting out of there about 10 o'clock at night. So the second day can be kind of a long one. We just don't want you starting at 7 o'clock because you'll be done at midnight. Unless that's what you like to do. If you like to work super late into the night, that's
No,
your-
we've done that before. I've done that before. That's no fun.
Yeah, it can be a long day. So starting at 4 has worked great for some boards. So you're out of there at 7:30 the first day and maybe by 9 the second day. Some boards do them in the evening and then the next day they pick up right away at 9 a.m. and they like to wrap up, then they'll be done by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 1:30. You can bring in lunch over the break while MSBA is tabulating the results of your evaluation tools, however you'd like to structure it. Evenings, mornings, whatever.
Well, I'll tell you what, my week is open that week. It's the week after I'm going to plant corn. So whatever is good for everybody else. Anybody else have an idea on it?
Did Tyra talk about Easter? When is Easter? Is that that?
The 4th, so the 5th is technically Easter Monday. Royalton is not at school that day.
That's right.
I guess I'm fine with doing Monday, Tuesday, but like Randy said, I guess I'm pretty open then that week as well. Even I could, far enough out, I could even make it so we do an evening and a day, or during the day, I could make sure I could take off to make sure I'm available. So I guess I'll, if others have a harder schedule, I'll leave it up to them because I'm fairly open. The 4 o'clock starting at 4 and going to the evening would be ideal, but I could certainly adjust it to come during the afternoon or morning one of those days. I'm fine with that too.
I'm good with whatever.
If you do it on the 5th, there are no children here, so that might be easier for a facility for you and a little more privacy. You can start at any time you want.
Could we do a morning on the 5th? And run until whatever time it will take? And then do the 4 o'clock on the 6th? Would that work?
I request afternoon instead.
Ryan, is that what
I'd be up for that. It'd be better for me if I could do the afternoon on the Monday and then the day on Tuesday if we were gonna do an afternoon and day.
Okay, I mean, I don't care.
I didn't hear that. You did a little louder.
I just said for me, it'd be better to do Monday afternoon as well, and then do Tuesday day.
Well, how about this? How about we do Monday the 5th from 4 to 7:30, and then Tuesday from 3, we'll start at 3 o'clock. That'd get us done a little bit earlier in the night. Does that work for anybody?
Yep.
Yes,
So let's talk,
Ross?
we'll talk about round 2 for just a minute, because sometimes round 2 affects a little bit of when you want to do round 1. Tentatively, I'm hearing April 5th and 6th, correct?
yes.
Yes.
Tuesday. You could then, that same week, do your second round of interviews with your 3 finalists. We usually recommend 3, but maybe it'll be 2. But we recommend 3, generally speaking, in case one drops out. You still have 2 folks to interview. You could do that on that Thursday or Friday if you did during the Friday during the day. So you could do the 5th, 6th, round 2 on the 8th or 9th. Or you could put a weekend between them and do round 1 on the 7th and 8th and round 2 on the 12th or 13th. You want at least 1 or 2 days between round 1 and round 2, but you don't want too long. Any more than a week, and that's too long between your interview rounds. A lot can happen in a week. Candidates can take other positions. The community can stir up all kinds of mischief. Talking about your candidates place doubt in people's heads. So we usually recommend a couple of days tops. So I would recommend the 5th and 6th, and then the 8th or 9th, or the 7th and 8th, and the 12th or 13th. Whether that affects your decision or not is up to you, but those are just some recommendations.
What does the end of that week look like for anybody? I know that's going to be a big week then.
Doing them all in 1 week is a lot. I have a board
Yeah.
this week that is doing round 1 on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and round 2 on Thursday. They're doing 3 days in a row, and it's going to be too much, I think. I worry for their endurance level, but they wanted to rip off the Band-Aid and do them back to back to back.
Can
So you
we
think
do
a week
all?
is just too long?
Can we do all the second round on one day?
Yes. Second round is 1 day. It'll be about 3 interviews plus deliberations. So maybe 4.5 hours.
I guess, depending upon what Barb thinks, but I guess I would support the Monday, Tuesday on the 5th and 6th. And then could we go the next Monday, or is that too long?
You can do it as long as it's within that week. I would say a Monday to a Monday is as far as you want to go. Monday, Tuesday, and Monday is good.
Or we would have to do the Friday, right, or Thursday, and like you said, then it's all. Or you would propose we would move back to the 6th and the 7th, and then do the Monday. But I don't know if that works for people's schedules.
It totally depends on your schedules, other commitments that you might have. If you could do maybe the 7th and 8th and the 12th, and the 7th, or the 7th and 8th and the 13th, that would give you a weekend to recover between round 1 and round 2. But I don't know if that's even a possibility for you folks.
At this point, I'm open enough that I can make anything work. It's so
Yeah.
far out I could
Yeah.
schedule. Randy, I don't know if you're planting corn or.
Yeah, does the 12th
I'm
work?
just joking. They won't plant until May 1st, but
I don't know. I'm gonna write that down. We're gonna have a foot of snow yet in April.
yeah, probably.
Well, I'd be good with the 7th and the 8th, and then again on the 12th.
Would anybody object to the 7th and 8th and then on the 12th?
Nope.
I think that'll work for us then.
Yep.
Okay. What time on the 7th and what time on the 8th? We'll start with that.
Let's if anybody disagrees with me, just say so, but how about let's do 4 o'clock on the 7th and 3 o'clock on the 8th?
I like it.
Then what time on the 12th?
She said that's about 4 hours, so we probably should shoot for 3 o'clock there again, huh?
If a clear front runner, you can be done in 3.5 to 4 hours. If you have 2 or 3 extremely strong candidates, you might talk a long time about which one to make an offer to. So it always says it depends. Sometimes boards spend 2 hours or more deliberating because they've got such strong candidates. Other times you just know who you want and it doesn't take very long at all.
I'm okay with 3. I think that I would like to start a little sooner, so then if we do have that discussion, we aren't exhausted.
Yeah, I don't want us to be making decisions under duress.
They're all open.
Yes.
All 3, 4, 5 hours.
Did you catch that, Barb? These are all open meetings, correct?
Every single one of them, yes.
Including the discussion?
Yes.
Which when we do this in the time of COVID now with the electronic is a whole lot different than when you've seen the people sitting in the room, right?
Yes. Every district since last March and even into this year has conducted their interviews remotely, where people are sitting on individual devices like Randy, Russ, myself, and John. So you can see your faces. The candidate would want to be able to see the rest of you as well. And the way you're currently sitting far away from the camera and with masks on, they don't get to know you. So if you do conduct your interviews virtually like this, we'll help you figure out with technology how to ensure that you're up close and personal in your own little Zoom square. Who knows though, by early April, possibly you'll be conducting interviews in person again. It's very unpredictable right now. But virtually has been working very, very well for all of our districts. I think they've been surprised how well the interviews have gone, considering that you don't get to shake someone's hand and look them in the eye. You do it through Zoom, and it has worked very, very well. But that's definitely a consideration that you'll want to think through.
All right, well, those dates work, I guess. You can write them down and stamp them.
April 7th at 4, April 8th at 3 for round 1. April 12th at what time?
3.
3. April 12th at 3 p.m. for round 2. And somewhere between April 8th and April 12th, someone on the board is going to do some due diligence and make a couple of reference check calls. It'll be part of the interview training, but usually it's the board chair, but not always. We'll give you a list of questions and you can pick 2 or 3 questions to ask folks that you call just to do a final check on your final candidates. Sometimes people will tell a board member something that they might not tell MSBA. We've done lots of reference checking ahead of time, but as board members, you should make a couple of calls and just really get a feel for who your final 3 candidates are. And then you report back after deliberations in that final round. So, and then finally, board committee or designee negotiates with your finalist. If you have the interview on April 12th, someone's going to want to pick up the phone on April 13th and talk to this candidate and start to lay the groundwork for the contract. Now, there's some considerations you want to think about. If it's going to be the full board conducting negotiations, the back and forth with your candidate, it needs to be an open meeting. So it needs to be posted at least 3 days in advance. And depending upon which candidate you select, you won't know who that is until April 12th. And if you have a meeting scheduled for April 13th for negotiations, well, what if your chosen candidate can't get to you at that time? You need to reschedule it for 3 days out, post it, and then talk. But I know that boards and candidates are anxious to get going once they've picked the person. So you can designate one person to negotiate on behalf of the board. Again, typically it's the board chair, not always, but very often is. And you in an open meeting will tell your board chair, these are the parameters we want you to stay within. This is the compensation package that we're comfortable with. We'd like you to start at this salary. Go forth and talk to this person and see what you can work out.
It doesn't have to be the board chair, right?
Doesn't have to be the board chair. It does not. But that person.
I'm the worst car buyer in the world, so.
Then it does not need to be an open meeting. And so if someone has been given parameters from the board in an open meeting, and it's usually right after you've selected your finalist, your last person, it's like, okay, let's talk negotiations. What are we going to be able to offer this person? And you make a decision. It might take 5 minutes. And you may just say, go talk to them and see what you can work out. Bring it back to the board in an open meeting and talk about the contract, and then hopefully approve it at some point fairly soon as well. But in that case, where it says time to be determined for a special.
Barb, just a second. Russ had a question.
Oh,
Yep.
yes, sir.
Thanks, Randy. Hey, so does it have to be an individual, or can it be two individuals? What's the rule there? I guess I was surprised it had to be one. I was thinking just as long as you don't have a quorum.
No, MSBA will tell you, and this MSBA is always very conservative when it comes to the open meeting law. When in doubt, be cautious. And so our stance is if it's more than one board member and you're talking board business, it should be an open meeting. Now, I can't tell you that every single board does that. There's lots of boards with lots of committees. The whole, it's not a quorum argument is made by plenty of boards. This is just MSBA's recommendation, but you're the board. Local authority and local control is very important to us. So you'll make the call on how you want to negotiate. If two people do it and they're both board members, that's your call. We just tend to say, let's be cautious and have one person so you can't be accused of conducting board business behind closed doors. That'll be, yes.
Mary Lang, my question is, we get to the final candidate and he doesn't want it, or she, then what? Do we start the whole process over again? Do we go to, instead of A, we go to candidate B? How does that work?
That's a great question, Mary. Remember when I said that it's really important when you're discussing the candidates in public, because once you've named their names, when they're in that first round of interviews, everybody knows who they are. So when you're deliberating who you want to move on to the second round, you're saying things like, well, I thought Joe was really strong in this area and I liked when he said this. And I thought that Sally answered this question extremely well. So we'll coach you to talk about them in those positive terms, because it has happened where your first choice declines the opportunity or had a competing offer or doesn't come to agreement on salary. And so if you have visited with, or if you have deliberated on people and you have strong candidates in the hopper, it's happened where the second choice of your finalists has accepted the position. Before I started at MSBA, they even went to their third finalist. They had an extremely strong final three. First one didn't work out. Second one got another offer. Third one gladly accepted the position, in part because they felt like they were treated so well by the board and so respectfully during the deliberations about their interviews. So you'll have some strong people to select from. If you only liked one person and there is no second and third choice for the board, it's that person, no one, then I would recommend at that point, we help you find an interim for 1 year. That interim would keep the wheels on the bus, keep the district moving forward, and you launch another search next fall, late next fall in November or December. And then we would do that search for free. If for some reason the search does not result in a viable candidate, we'll continue to work with you until you find the right superintendent.
Thank you.
Did that answer the question, Mary?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So do you have any sense yet, or do you want to think about whether you'll have a committee or an individual negotiate this contract? You want to think about it?
I think we should think about it. Being the way I am, I would not feel comfortable doing that myself. But if there was somebody else on the board that would feel comfortable, I would gladly not take that position on. I'm sure there's other people that have more strengths than that. I am not a good negotiator. Never have been, never will be. I'm too soft. So that's the way it is. So I'm just calling a cow. So.
And now I find that out.
Sure.
Too late, John.
The only reason why I was saying too, my thought is because we did just in January pick a group for superintendent negotiations, right? So I was just thinking if it has, your recommendation is one, is it maybe one of those? Maybe we open it up.
It is up for us to decide, Russ. I mean,
on that was just my thought.
Because they suggest it doesn't mean that we can't stretch the boundaries of it. We just have to be able to defend it,
Yep.
So.
Yep.
So why don't we leave it as is? I'm going to change April 10th to April 13 though, because if you're conducting round 2 interviews on April 12th, negotiations to start immediately the next day, April 13th.
Okay.
So April 13th, do you have a board meeting in mid or late April where you could approve the contract, a regular board meeting?
A regular board meeting in April, I believe, is April 19th. Is that right?
26.
26, right.
26th. I'm sorry. It's the 26th.
You were
So-
testing everybody, right, Randy?
Yeah, I was testing them, right? No, I was wrong. So,
We could put that you meet to approve the contract at your regular meeting on April 26th. It's up to you. You could call a special meeting sooner than that. Because that does give you almost 2 weeks between starting negotiations and signing a contract. That might work out perfectly fine unless your candidate's considering another offer. So some boards, when they find out that perhaps they need to move quickly, will call a special meeting to approve the contract. But for this form, we could put you plan to approve the contract April 26th. And what time would be your regular meeting on that day?
6 o'clock.
6 p.m.? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll put April 13th that negotiations begin and you'd approve the contract on the 26th at 6 p.m. I'm going to read to you real quickly what my notes say. I'm going to type this all up tomorrow and I will send it to the chair and he's going to confirm that my notes are correct. And once he's looked at it and said, yep, that's what we agreed to, then this is the timeline. You did a great job solidifying this.
Can
So,
you also send it to the vice chair.
okay. Randy and Russ.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. You will be meeting for interview training on March 16th at 6 p.m. You will be determining your finalists on March 31st at 6 p.m. Conducting first round of interviews on April 7th at 4 p.m. and April 8th at 3 p.m. You'll conduct the second round of interviews on April 12th at 3 p.m. Someone, an individual or a committee, will negotiate 13th. And you'll approve the contract April 26th at 6 p.m. Okay, that's what I will type up and send to Randy and Russ to take a look at. Is there someone that could move to approve this timeline with the changes that we just discussed? And that way tomorrow when they look at it, they can say, yep, that's it. We don't have to have another meeting for you to approve the timeline. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'll move the timeline that we just discussed.
I'll second.
It was moved by Director Hackett and seconded by Director Lang to approve the timeline of March 16th at 6 o'clock, March 31st at 6 o'clock, April 7th at 4 o'clock, April 8th at 3 o'clock, April 12th at 3 o'clock, April 13th, and then April 26th at 6 o'clock. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Superintendent Phelps, will you call the roll?
Director Bauman,
Aye.
Director Jarrett,
Aye.
Director Hackett,
Aye.
Director Hofstad,
Aye.
Director Lang,
Aye.
Director Rory.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Motion is approved, 6-0-0. All right. What else do we have?
The brochure. This is what we would like to publish as soon as we post it, and it looks like we're looking to post this on Monday. So again, John did a great job of sending me information regarding the points of pride with your school district. We have room to add to about the community. And I will fill in on this document all of the timeline that we just discussed. But I was just curious if you had a chance to read through this. Is there anything missing on the left side of the front, which is the school district points of pride? Is there anything else about Royalton Public Schools that you really want to make sure candidates know? And what else would you like to say about the community? And it's a chance to sell the opportunity for someone who's never been to Royalton, that doesn't know the area. What would really pique their interest? What are you most proud of? What do you like best about living there? So there is some things in here already, but I'm ready to take your thoughts and add to it, and I'll edit this for you first thing in the morning.
Don't say Treasure City.
Don't say what?
Treasure City, you've never been through
Oh.
here.
I have been past Treasure City. You don't want me to mention that, huh?
Closest you'll get to wall drugs without going there.
I don't know. What does anybody think here?
Is there anything the Chamber of Commerce would particularly highlight or that realtors use to draw people to want to come live in Royalton?
I'm sure they do, but I don't have it readily available. I could, when do we need to have the edits to you, like right away in the morning?
If I had them by tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we wouldn't post it till Friday morning or noon anyway, so I'd have some time.
Okay, so I can definitely look to see if I can have a couple more that we could put in there, and then when I send it to you, I can send it, just have the whole board send it to this whole group, and then they can yay or nay it.
As long as people can get back to you quickly enough. And yeah, just don't be having a lot of discussions back and forth. You know, we don't like the reply to all feature because of the serial meeting accusation that you're doing business on email. You could send it and say, if any of you have responses, just send me direct responses. Don't invite the whole group and start asking people to comment. Just directly back to Russ with your thoughts, and then he can send me any other ideas. If you don't have any more, I can always move stuff around and fill in the white space. So don't feel like you have to come up with me.
Okay.
I think et cetera is a good one.
You like those?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of good. I just can't think of them right now.
All right, so waiting some additions to about the community. It sounds like everyone's okay with the points of pride on the left side. I'll update the timeline. The by the numbers came from John. Thank you again for your help with that. The second page, I will say the hiring criteria on the left of the second page is what came out of that survey link that you all filled out for me. Again, thank you for that. Those are the hiring criteria, 5 bullets. Does that sound like it reflects the kind of leader you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way the questionnaires came out. So, I mean, that must be what it is, right?
I would agree. I think they seem like good traits. So yes, I would be happy if we could get somebody to fill all those.
Okay. We will use these repeatedly during the search. This is sort of the yardstick that you'll hold up to measure candidates by. When we do our reference checks, we'll ask questions that really get to the heart of whether someone is a good mediator, whether someone works well with the school board, whether they've been ethical and honest in their dealings with staff and the community, and so on and so forth, whether they're out of their office and very visible and accessible. So we'll go back to these and ask questions about them. I'm getting feedback from someone. I think it might be Russ's. Anyone else getting that whistling and the weird noises? Russ, could you mute for a second and see if that helps?
My headphone's already on mute, so it's not me, but I can do it.
Okay, the weird echo. Randy's already muted. Still getting it, so it must be in the cafetorium there. I'm hearing myself talk. Is anyone hearing the echo? I'm hearing it repeat what I said 2 minutes ago. This is weird. Okay, now it's quiet. That was weird. I was hearing myself doing this. I'm going to keep talking. So what we do need to decide tonight is how you want to phrase your salary language. And the next page gives you 4 choices. Any of these 4 will work. This is what would go in the brochure. We just want to know from you which you prefer. If you use some sort of number, there is the next document where we did some research on surrounding districts, just to give you an idea of what other superintendents are being paid, what some of their general benefits are. This is not going to be super important until you get to the point of negotiating with your finalists. Then this information might be a lot more helpful. I do need to clarify one thing though, under health insurance. All those lines that say 1 should be 100%. I don't know why, but when I went from an Excel spreadsheet and I saved it as a PDF, everything that said 100% went to 1. So that makes a little more sense when it says 100%. All right, but you can see what the salaries are, base salaries of your surrounding superintendents are. You could choose to use a number. And what we usually say is it's completely up to you. The first verbiage in this option for you is one that a lot of boards do select. They want to share the current superintendent salary and that's it. They don't want to get tied into a minimum of, but you can certainly do that. Room to grow depending upon their experience. Or they could go with a salary range with the floor and the ceiling of what you're willing to pay this person. Not many districts choose that fourth option because it's very vague. And there are, if you ask candidates, how important is it to have a ballpark idea of what they might be paid? About every single one of them would say I'd at least like a ballpark. Some real general words don't tend to pique their interest as much. So I'm going to turn it back over to the board and let you discuss how you might want to phrase your salary in this brochure. We'll put in here whatever you want. This is the board's decision.
So last night when we met with Lee, we went through the 4 options. And he kind of talked about how the first option was the one that, if you look at the 4th option, it really is a non sequitur. It absolutely says nothing. And the first one doesn't pin you into something. I would think that that first option probably is the best one. Does anybody agree with that, or?
Yep.
I definitely don't like the third option with the range. That one's my, I like the first one too, Randy.
Well, I mean, no, I get it. I mean, if you really wanted to try to control your spending and everything else, but I don't see that in any of our survey that we took with the board that was a primary idea. So, if there's nobody that objects to using that first option, I think that's the one we should use. I'm not hearing anybody object. So Barb, I think that's what we're going to use, is we're going to go with that first option.
Okay, sounds good. And I know John double checked with me today with the real specificity of his exact salary. So we'll put the exact salary in there. And that will be the language in salary and benefits. So that is the conclusion of the brochure and the edits that I needed you to make tonight. Would someone be willing to approve the brochure with those edits, considering additional ideas about the community that I'll get from Russ, and then including which as discussed on salary, and then we're good to go with the brochure. I will also send that to Randy and Russ for a final set of eyes on it Thursday night or Friday morning.
I did come up with a couple of things for the brochure that I was just thinking about here. We're in really close proximity to the Stew Line Trail, which is biking and ATVing. And we also have a very strong Lions Club in Royalton. I am not a member, but I know there are members that are on the board and they're very active, and it's a very active club. A lot of times these members that are in leadership, they're looking for something like that. So.
In the Stew Line Trail, you said it was hiking and ATV?
It's biking and ATV. So,
biking and ATV?
Yep.
Is it snowmobiling in the winter or not?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Biking,
I don't
ATV,
know.
snowmobiling?
They say yes, so I'll go with their idea.
It also lines up with the Wabagon Trail. Wabagon Trail?
Wabagon.
Oh.
Lake Wabagon Trail.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
lines up with that.
How do you spell Wabagon?
Wobogen.
Just like it sounds. Okay.
Yeah.
So those two trails connect, Lake Wabagon
Yeah.
Trail and the Sioux Line Trail.
Yep.
Okay. Close proximity to those, a very active and engaged Lions Club in Royalton. Okay. Might be out of space because those will take a couple of lines each, and I had probably room for 4 to 5 lines. So Russ, you might be off the hook having to go to the Chamber of Commerce. You can still look, and if you find something absolutely fabulous, let me know and I'll make room for it because there are some things I could cut. But otherwise, those are great additions, Randy. Thank you very much. All right, so are you good with the brochure pending those changes? And if so, could someone make a motion to approve it tonight?
Okay, is there a second?
Ryan seconded.
Was that Director Roaring that moved it?
No,
Oh.
Director Bauman.
Okay. It was moved by Director Bauman and seconded by Director Hofstad to approve the, well, what are we calling this thing? The brochure.
Brochure. Yep.
With the changes. Any discussion? Hearing none, will you call the roll, Superintendent Phelps?
Director Bauman,
Aye.
Director Jerks,
Aye.
Director Hackett,
Aye.
Director Ofsted,
Aye.
Director Lang,
Aye.
Director Rory.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passes 6-0-0. All right, under the survey, I believe, huh?
You bet. Qualifications survey is next. You can find that in your packet as well. This is the survey which will go online, I think on Friday. We're suggesting this go live already. Yes, February 12th through March 2nd. So about 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks that'll be open, which should be plenty of time to allow your stakeholders to respond. This includes their qualifications. The second page will look really familiar because the second page is the exact same survey you took as board members. So it'll be interesting to see if your stakeholders select the same top 5 to 8 that you did as a board. And then this is where we've also begun including those listening session questions. So after the question about the personal characteristics of the superintendent, we ask, I think I put all 5 in here, but you can certainly cut some or change some if you want to. What are the good things happening? What challenges lie ahead? What qualities do you think they should have to be successful here? What should they know about the politics of the community and the district in order to be successful? And if you could say one thing, what would you say to the new superintendent? Those are the 5 focus group questions. We have had boards say, well, this gets to be a pretty long survey. And so some of these are a little duplicative. So I would just say most commonly, if they're going to cut questions, they cut question 3 because it's an open-ended question asking the same thing that is asked earlier in the survey where it says pick your top 6. The qualities and characteristics have been identified from a drop-down menu, but you could still leave that in there, but that's a little bit of a duplication. And sometimes people say question 5 is sort of, it's a nice way to finish a focus group and wrap it up and have people leave feeling good. But it's not necessarily something that will provide you with a lot of good data in a survey. So I'd say 3 and 5 get eliminated sometimes, or we could consider doing actual focus groups with your stakeholders via Zoom like this. Hasn't been very successful yet, but you have that option since you're the board.
I have a couple of questions too.
That was one person that talked about doing the survey and have those 2 questions as well. Director Rory.
I'm sorry, I was just talking there with no mic on, so. I'm okay with leaving all 5 questions in. At the minimum, it would provide some input for the board. What does anybody think? Is that too long? I mean, maybe people will get to that part and quit because that's not easy as checking boxes too. I don't know.
I quit.
I don't feel like it's too long. could you update question 5 to maybe not one thing you could say to the superintendent, but one thing that you would want the board to know? Or one thing you want the board to consider? So we could use that to know kind of what the community is looking at. For us, you know, looking in.
I'm okay with that. Is anybody else okay with that change?
Could you
Or
give me
not?
verbiage you want? I think that sounds like a great suggestion, but I want to get the language right.
I believe she said, instead of asking, what is the one thing you would like the superintendent to know? What is the one thing you would, where,
The board to take into consideration, maybe? One thing you would
there
like
you go.
to take into consideration.
You want to ask about one thing. What is the one thing you would like the board to take into consideration
When hiring the superintendent.
when hiring the superintendent? Okay, thank you. Hiring the next superintendent.
That's
Great
not a bad question.
Question. That's great.
Could we maybe make that the first question, like the first of those 5?
We can do anything you want with this survey.
And that's a good call. Then if they quit, they're answering that one.
Right.
You know, you're gonna get one that's like 9 paragraphs. That's one thing.
I don't, the one question I'm not I don't like question 4 that much. I just, the history and the maybe it's because I don't know, it just, ugh. That I could see going off the rails, but maybe that's just me. I'm fine with all 5 questions though, per this suggestion Tyra made though.
Russ, would you rather have it just say just about the history and not politics?
The politics part is the one that I don't particularly like, but
The candidates aren't seeing this survey, correct? So do we even want them to address what they would want the superintendent to know? I mean, isn't this more? So I think we could maybe even get rid of it, like Russ was saying, because candidates aren't seeing this to know what the community wants them to, you know what I mean, like the way it's phrased.
Well,
That's a
they're
question.
telling us what the community wants to see in the superintendent, so we look for that same thing.
Right.
I should clarify too that you may get a lot of comments and it's just too much for you to have to read through. So for every survey that we do, we summarize them for you and we provide you with a stakeholder report. We'll give you all of the quantifiable data. We'll summarize the trends because the comments are going to fall into 3 to 5 common areas. So we'll summarize those for you and give you some representative quotes under each. We will pull and not share with the board any inappropriate comments, anything that is slanderous or inflammatory. We don't share those with the board. They don't prove fruitful at all. So we'll screen the responses and make sure that what we're giving you is useful for you during the superintendent search. Now, some boards, back to your question, I think it was Tyra asked it, some boards will take the stakeholder report and as part of the superintendent's welcome, they share the stakeholder report with the superintendent. So the superintendent knows what people are looking for and what stakeholders have said. That's your option. I would say that happens about 25% of the time that they think it would be very useful for a superintendent to hear what the community is saying. And so they do share it with them, but that's your call. And I think that question that Russ is questioning, he's absolutely right. If I'm in a focus group in person with people, there are people that don't say a word on the first 3 questions. That 4th question finally gets them to crack open and say something. So it's meant to be a little bit, what's the word? It's meant to rattle their cage a little bit because some people will not have said anything. And finally they're like, well, let me tell you. And then they start to actually share. It's not always productive, but it can be. But that's a focus group question in person. And so it isn't necessary to ask it in writing. particularly if you think it's not going to give you anything useful. So you tell me what you'd like to do with any of these. I like the idea of that one question being first. What is one thing you would like the board to take into consideration when hiring the next superintendent? Having that be your opening question is a great idea, and I can certainly do that. But just tell me what else you'd like me to do.
I wonder, Russ, if that question isn't going to, so you're worried about the little bit of crazy that might come out in it. But if you don't have a place for the little bit of crazy to go, it's going to end up in all the other categories, right? So maybe it's just not bad to just leave it there and have it be what it is.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah, I'm not that opposed to it. But no, I think for this, like you said, it's a good. And if the MSBA is looking at it and going to take out things that aren't useful to us, I'm in agreement. I think just leave it. Give them an opportunity.
Does anybody else feel about that?
I don't think it hurts to open that discussion a little bit. I think maybe if we're more open about what has happened in the past, that will make it more palatable to people who aren't normally 100% behind the school.
I do
don't
think
hear any
value in people. Go ahead, sorry.
I don't hear any dissent to just changing that fifth question, changing the verbiage and moving it to the first question, and then letting the other ones fall where they are.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
I am.
It sounds like we are, so I imagine she wants us to move this, so I'll move it then.
Who's that? Thank you.
Who seconded it?
I'm Rory. Director
All
Rory.
right. Is there any discussion? It was moved by Director Hackett and seconded by Director Roaring to approve the survey questions as discussed by changing the verbiage on question 5, moving it to 1, and letting the other questions fall in place. Any discussion?
Do we need to pick the dates for this? Opening and closing?
Those are on the timeline, February 12th to March 2nd.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, will Superintendent Phelps call the roll?
Director Bauman,
Aye.
Director George,
Aye.
Director Hackett,
Aye.
Director Ofsted,
Aye.
Director Lang,
I
Director Rory,
Aye.
6-0.
Let the record reflect, motion is carried 6-0-0.
Great, thank you so much. So if you look back at the timeline, I'm going to scribble out the time that said to be determined about doing listening sessions, because that's a part of the survey, which I think is a really good call. And with the survey closing at midnight on March 2nd, we will have that stakeholder report done and compiled and to the board in time for your meeting on March 16th. So Lee will do a debrief with you on March 16th of the stakeholder input and see if there was anything that is running contrary to what the board has been telling us you're looking for. And I really appreciate whoever said that it might be good to let people share what they think. You'd be surprised. Sometimes all people want to do is be heard. And if they have an axe to grind with the school, sometimes this survey allows them to be heard and they feel better about the process. Even if it wasn't constructive for you as a board member, it can really serve a good thing for the board moving forward. So that is the survey. I will have the link on Friday. I will send it if it's okay. John, do you post things on the website, or is there a communications person in the district? Who would get the survey link along with the communication? Because we have like a press release you could use to put up. media or wherever.
Yeah, what I would do is get it posted on our website. I'd also put out a school reach.
Okay.
And part of that school reach, I'll put the link into the email that can go along with it. So everyone gets it. We've had great success with that past.
Great. So I will send that on Friday to John so he can get the word out and people can start responding to the survey. I always copy the board chair on my communications around the survey. So Randy, do you want to be copied? Do you also want Russ copied on that too?
Yes, I do.
Okay. John.
2 heads is better than 1, man.
All right. Superintendent search survey. We are approaching the conclusion of the planning meeting. I do want to visit with the board on a couple of just logistical questions. One is the role of the superintendent. And there, it's mainly for expectation management, is how will a sitting superintendent be involved in the search for their replacement? And it's a little different in every district. It might be a little different in Royalton. I will tell you that usually the sitting superintendent is uninvolved in the search, doesn't attend the board meetings, isn't a point of contact for us, and so on and so forth. Part of that is intentional so that the board has a chance to take ownership of this. A sitting superintendent can at times really help direct and guide the board, but occasionally when it's talking about the next step, that guidance can sometimes not be as productive as it would if they were simply separated from. I'll have to say John's been a great resource so far with getting back to me on the district information template and getting the meeting link set up. And I know that there's not a huge administrative support staff team in place for Royalton. So I just wanted to ask the board, what do you see John's role being moving forward with the search? How would you like him involved? Is he a point person for communications? And then is Randy and Russ the point person for other communications to forward information to the board? How would you like to proceed with that? And it's a little bit of an awkward conversation. And John, you've been around for a long time. You know how it is with boards of superintendents, but I always find if we don't at least talk about it, so the roles are clear, what you're looking for from your superintendent, what support you need, when is it okay that they not be involved, and the board will just move forward in the board's vision. I just like to broach the subject and see what you'd like to do.
As the board chair, my electronic skills are limited. So I would like, when we're doing stuff with electronic communications, for it to at least be forwarded also to the vice chair, so that in case I miss something. I have a tendency of deleting things that I don't try to delete. I don't get it, but whatever. How does anybody feel about this? Director Lang, do you have any feelings?
I think it's very difficult when you're looking for a new person to have your city superintendent there. However, I do feel that we do need the resources that he can provide us. So now this is the quandary. What do we do? We don't need John to babysit us. He knows that we know pretty much what we're doing. And with the grace of God, we'll be okay. But I'd like to be able to include him when it's appropriate and when it can serve a good purpose. Now, I do not know how that suits with MSBA, but that's just how I feel. That we've used him as such a great resource for so long. I just would like to know that we could at least go to him as our go-to guy if some question would arise. If that's all right with John. Sorry, Jeff.
My question is merely logistics of, if we choose to not include him, what staff do we have at our availability to do some of this stuff?
That's a good question. I mean, I agree with you. John has been our go-between for those resources, and We don't have a HR person full-time right now. We don't have a secretary, a superintendent secretary. So we have we're going to have to use staff, and I don't know. Without John being there to direct them, it's a little difficult.
One thing I absolutely don't want to be in on any of the selection part, any of the interview parts, anything like that, just to help you out. This has got to be your decision. You have to move through. This is your superintendent, and you know what you're looking at. And Barb has said that tonight to you many times. That's why I feel it's very good for me to back up. I'm more than happy to be the contact person and get things to you. But that's your decision.
But see, that's what we need, John, from you, because we don't have those other ancillary people.
No, there is no superintendent assistant.
No, right, and that would have been nice, but it just doesn't exist. And because of that, I think we're in a kind of a unique position. However, if, like I said, if you could be that go-to person where we say, hey, John, we need information on this, we need this or that, because that will happen. And so when it does, I'd like to know that there is at least somebody that we can contact that can get these things done and know who does what where. I don't.
We can figure that out too. I mean, what does anybody else feel? I mean, I sure wouldn't, if I was interviewing for a job, I wouldn't want the guy that I was taking the job from sitting right alongside of me while I was doing it.
No, and that's what I said.
Yeah, I know that, Mary. We got to try. I think what Barb is saying is that we need to try to define this relationship now while we're all talking and getting along so that we don't screw it up at the end. So if I'm hearing everybody right, well, I haven't heard from everybody, but we could use him as a resource, but not as the point man is probably what I'm guessing. That's what we're going to do. Does anybody else have any opinions on this? Tyra, Angie, Russ?
Just a question. So when we, like in round one, at least in round one, maybe even in round two, right? Where when we are talking with the candidates, who sets up like the Zoom meetings and things like that? Does MSBA do that, or do we have to have a resource at the school do it?
The school sets those up. And you are in a unique situation. Mary's absolutely right. Typically, there is a superintendent secretary. The next question on here is in-district contact person. Oh, you skip over spokesperson. But typically, the district will have an administrative staff person who is MSBA's point person. And we send them the board packet. They send it to the full board. We work with them to schedule the interviews, get the Zoom link sent to all the candidates. It's a very administrative coordinator type of role. And that's almost always been an administrative assistant to the superintendent or to the school board. Since you don't have that from a technology standpoint, John's been doing a great job getting these meeting links arranged, but that falls on the school district. So you would need some help there.
Well, like tonight I see David is sending out meeting links, right? So obviously David can help with that. But I would agree with what Mary and Randy, I mean, I think there'll be times when we need information, and I think at this point John has done a great job helping with that, so we'll need him for that. But yeah, if David can create those meetings and help with that, I don't know. And I'm assuming David and Joy also help put things in. Would we ask a principal to help? Let's say if we needed to do a school reach for that in the future. I'm assuming they have the ability to do that type of thing too.
They certainly can do that.
So, yeah, I would. Yeah, I don't know. I guess. I think we should try to. I know John would definitely be willing to help, but maybe we have to try to find, like you said, some better ways to. If we need information, maybe John's that guy. But other than that, maybe then we have to rely on David and maybe the principals to help us. I don't know. That's just my opinion too. I guess I don't have a huge concern if John helps us with some things, but obviously, like John List said, those other things he just can't be involved with. And even scheduling these meetings, I'm guessing if an email has to go out to a candidate, it's probably in our interest not to have John do it, right? So
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Is there anybody else working in the district office that would be able to be a point of contact?
The problem is the timeline and how much time one plans on things. There's some things that I first should talk about David. David and I have been working together to set up stuff. I'll go to David to do it. Now he's here tonight, so as soon as they were done, he was sending out invites to all eight, which is super. To set up the interviews, I passed it on to Susan. She does that for us regularly when we need interviews. So there are different ways I can direct things for you on different things. It's up to you, however you want to run it. I'm more than happy to do it however you would like me to. Except I should not absolutely be the spokesperson for the district. For that. You could have a principal, Barb, do stuff like that, or will Lee do that?
Typically, the spokesperson would be the board chair or the board member who is directing the search. That's like media inquiries. Anyone has a question on the search and what is the school going to do about it, then one person from the board needs to be the spokesperson so that all board members aren't answering all kinds of questions. You want one unified voice. You want to talk about team building. There's a good chance that if board members are asked about the search, you say something positive, and if someone has a follow-up specific question, you direct them to the spokesperson. And that's something you get to decide tonight, is who is going to speak for the board regarding the search.
That's
think-
something we
Oh,
need
go
to
ahead.
decide right now.
We need to decide it tonight.
Okay.
Yep. I think it's a great conversation, and I appreciate you all being so forthright about it. And John, I appreciate your perspective as well. There's a couple things that really leap out at me. One is that it sounds like John is very clear in terms of what he should not be involved in. And I have to say, not all sitting superintendents are aware of that boundary. And they want to get a little too involved, and they want to encourage board members to do this or that. And that's not healthy. But it sounds like John has a good perspective on what would be his role and what would not. And the not would be most things. The other thing I think about with the board, after June 30th, John is not going to be your superintendent. So it's a really great opportunity for you as a board to learn to work with someone else. Your new superintendent starts July 1st, but they're not going to hit the ground running, understanding all this stuff, all the technology, all the things that John currently does. This person's going to be brand new in July. So using the search as an opportunity to get to know other resources in the district is to start to really walk on your own as a board without John's support and direction would be a really great way to build that board unity over the next couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
You could practice working without John being the glue that is holding you together.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, we have to decide on, I guess. So what would we have to decide on with what John's role is? Do we have to really define it, or do we just have to kind of come to a consensus, or what?
Just give us a general idea. Like I, for example, John contacted me about the proposal. I sent it to John and he sent the proposal out to the board. I sent him the link for you to fill out the survey. He sent it out to the board and followed up that you had filled out the link. I sent him the planning meeting packet. He sent it out to the board, so you had that packet for tonight's meeting. We could continue to do that, but Lee is going to need to know who to send that stuff to. Clearly on Friday, the survey link I'm going to send to John because it's going to go on your website and it needs to be in an email. So that needs to go to John, and I'll copy Randy and Russ on that email. But moving forward, there's going to be a lot of stuff that needs to go to the board. And Lee needs to know who to send that stuff to. And sometimes it's a board chair that distributes it to the rest of the board. Usually it's an administrative secretary that does it. I haven't had a superintendent yet, but again, you're in a unique circumstance, so.
So is it mostly making sure that we're online to make sure that, you know, things that you get sent out to the board or that type of thing? Or is it additional, like when we get into some of that, right? Is that what it is more, or is it getting more information, or it could be any of that?
I think it's more serving as the conduit to the board. MSBA does not want to email all 6 of you directly every single time because of that risk that you're going to reply to all. So we want to send it to one board member. That's why we usually copy the board, the chair or vice chair, and then this point person gets it and then distributes it to the board. So it really is a coordinator position. We send it to them, they send it to all of you. It's not a decision-making role at all. It's
Okay.
Andy Roaring has something to say.
Oh, if it's just dispersing emails and setting up meetings, I think that would be a good fit for David to be that point of contact. He could just forward it on if he's okay with that.
I'll go find out right now.
I was gonna say, otherwise, I would be more than willing to be that person.
David is good with that, if you would like David to do that.
Thank you.
That would be fine with me. Does anybody object to that?
Well, I think if Tyra is willing to do it, because I think it would be better if it would be a board person myself. So if she's willing to do that, she could still work with David to schedule meetings. But if she's willing to do that, I would like to see a board member do it. That's my opinion.
Is Tyra willing to do that?
Yeah.
Works for me. I know I'll screw it up, so I'm not gonna nominate myself for it. And everybody's got to know their strengths, and this is not one of mine. So it sounds like Tyra's going to be our contact person.
Okay, great. This is actually how board, Lee is currently working with the board in Northern Minnesota, where there's a board member who is not the chair, that is the in-district contact person. And he funnels things to her, copies the chair, and then she sends it out to the rest of the board. So she's filling that sort of coordinator role for the board, and it's working very well. So Tyra, that's great. You're a board member. Could I get your email address that you'd like us to use, Tyra? Could you send that to me?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so the in-district contact person is Tyra. Sounds good. If it is a technology issue, such as distributing the survey, should that still go directly to John and be copied to Randy and Russ? Or do you want David involved, whoever David is?
Or do you want to Tyra and she can push it to David?
Have that roll through Tyra too?
Yep. If she's willing to do that, that's probably the way to do it. Anybody object to that? Nobody objects to that, or at least they're not saying anything. So we're just going to go with it. So.
Okay. All right, so the role of the superintendent, just to clarify one last time, I put the role of superintendent, I put only as needed as a resource. So when the board feels they need assistance or guidance from John, you will talk directly to John, and we will.
Yeah,
Tyra,
I
and
think we can do that. If we really need him, we can come together as a board and we'll ask him. So.
Great, thank you so much. That was a great discussion, and I think it alleviates a lot of confusion down the road where people aren't understanding who's supposed to talk about what. John's nodding, he gets it. He understands the importance of the clarity around these expectations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it takes it off of you.
I really do think it will contribute to building your unity as a board, the decisions you just made. I think that's really smart. So kudos on that. So then who wants to be the spokesperson if the media calls and wants a quote on the superintendent search? To be honest, it doesn't happen very often. But if there is something that comes up, who's going to answer those questions?
I do not have a problem doing that. If you guys want me to do that, I will do that. If somebody else wants it more than that, but first of all, somebody's gonna have to catch up with me, so I don't have a problem with that. I've dealt with it before. We had, as a board, we had a pretty heated time about 6 years ago, and we had the local paper, and I had the local paper in the St. Cloud Times in my yard in the same day. So I've done it before, so I would be willing to do that again. Nobody else really wants it. I'll do that.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Sounds great to me.
Sounds like it. So I hope there's just nothing, but whatever. So
Spokesperson Randy, in-district contact person Tyra. Last item, two pre-screening priorities for the district. I'll tell you real quickly why we asked this question. We used to use AppleTrack. Is anyone familiar with AppleTrack? It's an application software system that is used all over for every educational job ever. It's huge and it's cumbersome. And MSBA last year investigated an opportunity to use an application system for our candidates that came from the Ohio School Boards Association. It's a proprietary system for executive search conducted by school board associations. And there are 39 states where school board associations help conduct superintendent searches. Well, this software package was built for us. It's built for people who do executive search the way school board associations do it. So that's what we're using. And one of the best things about it is it allows you to customize your application. There is a standard application process where it's like, give us your work history, your education history, your references, your contact information, your licenses, your transcripts, blah, 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 blah. Revelis, which is the system we're using, allows us to create questions that reflect what you most want to know about these people. So consider it sort of like an opportunity to interview them ahead of time. So if you end up with 10 applicants, you get to read their responses to questions that are customized to Royalton and any issues that are facing you. Like you had to think about the superintendent's first year. What is he or she going to want? Where you want to be sure they're ready to handle it. We can create 2 questions for you in the application that say whatever you want it to say. I have a district whose operating levy failed in November. So their question is, what's your experience in passing operating levy referendums? They want to know that as it helps them identify who to interview. We have another district that has a lot of equity issues, a lot of disparities amongst socioeconomic levels in the community. And they wanted to know the candidate's history in dealing with socioeconomic disparities. So they asked about that. So what in Royalton are the priorities for you that you might want us to ask about in your application?
I would say Randy, Russ, and Mary, are there any that you guys have come across in the last few years that stand out?
Things are pretty good, and the roofs leak and, that kind of thing. But I don't know, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but the new board members, they have new ideas. My big thing is the push on the reading, the dyslexia thing. That's my big push. But I don't want to, this isn't my hire. This is our hire. I don't want to be a one-man show here. So these are probably bigger questions than that, I don't know.
I would like to ask something about involving our strategic plan and curriculum resources and how we can push that forward as we're moving towards where we are now, towards individual education, as we get through the proficiency scales and all those things.
So is it about a strategic plan and the curriculum? Or is it about curriculum development and what's changing in education?
Well,
And then the strategic plan.
it's looking
Yeah,
at how we do our curriculum and through our strategic plan, with the PLCs going into proficiency scales and moving into exactly the standards-based learning that we want to get to eventually.
Okay. Is standards-based learning a great phrase to use to find out if someone knows what that is? Like, what is your
Yeah.
experience in standards-based learning? Or is that too simple?
No, I think that's okay. You know, the elephant in the room right now is just the whole distance learning and COVID, you know, that we're a week away from it any time right now. So, you know, and I hope that at the time that we've been in distance, I hope we don't, there's lessons to be learned and thoughts to be gleaned from it. So, you know, we've been on this path for a couple of years now to go to standards-based and personal learning. We should be able to take the information we've learned and push towards that. You know, I think that's, you know, maybe we can make up some of this time that we lost. Or make it better for somebody else. So I don't know.
I think you could ask a question about what have you learned through your experiences in the pandemic? Because people have learned a lot about delivering instruction through this pandemic. So you could ask something about the pandemic's effect on your understanding of, you could say personal learning and standards-based learning, specifically to see if they can turn the pandemic experience into specific ideas around standards-based learning or personal learning. Or is that too big? Or do you want to ask a very general question about how has your leadership changed as a result of the pandemic and its effect on student achievement?
I guess I don't mind if you're going to ask two questions for one of them to be really vague. We find this on the school board all the time, that we'll have questions and we'll fill out surveys ourselves, and you think the question is really pointed at one thing in the past or something, and as you go around the room you find out that there's 5 other opinions on what that question was asking. You know, not everybody reads the question the same, and there's a lesson to be learned there in how vague a question can be and what somebody gets out of it.
Barb, I did like how you phrased that last question, what you said. I mean, that did seem open enough, but I liked that. I don't, if you wrote it down. Dang it.
Let me ask you what I said.
Oh.
How has the pandemic affected your understanding of something and its effect on student achievement? Something. I'll find it. But somehow, how has the pandemic affected your understanding of education and its effect on student learning or student achievement? Would you like learning or student achievement? Which one of those feels better to you?
Personally, I like achievement better.
In achievement?
I have a feeling we're going to find out that the learning is second to the socialization that we've lost.
Okay.
So.
Because one of the questions too that I was thinking about was something based on, you know, with the pandemic and technology. So I would be interested, I think your question with that, it would be interesting to see if they tie in technology with that answer, or because I do think that's something that we're learning to use. Right before this, nobody did distance learning. Now it's like everybody's got experience in distance learning. So in using that technology. So I think your question could maybe lead into that. So that's why I guess I like that question. So then I don't feel like I would need something about technology myself.
Okay. So if I were to say, how has the pandemic affected your understanding of K-12 education and its effect on student achievement? Ryan, does that get to, I know it's very specific to say standards-based learning or student or personal learning, but Ryan, does that get to your idea of, are we going in the right direction? I didn't use the term strategic plan or anything in it, or do you still want a question around strategic planning or curriculum?
think those are two separate questions personally, but I'm not tied to it either way. I'd rather have something more within line with our strategic plan, because that's where the superintendent works with the board, and that's where we're driving towards. So if they understand what that is or look it up on our website, that'll give them a good guide to show where we're going with that. And then I think that second question that you just stated gets after more of how we can do that.
And remember, you're going to have a chance to ask 15 to 18 questions in the first interview, and you could very specifically ask about their background in standards-based learning and see what they say. So how about a second question that talks about their experience in strategic planning and the board and superintendent's roles in a successful strategic plan? Would that be okay if the questions around strategic planning and then the pandemic and student achievement? I don't know where you're at with your strategic plan, but if that's a great opening question to ask someone in this application.
So this is where we're at. We have a strategic plan, but we also have a new school board. So at some point we need to review the strategic plan and probably modify it some too, but we do need a captain on the ship to do that too. You know, and what a great opportunity it'll be to review the strategic plan with a new board and a new superintendent. Not, you know, if we can all come to, you know, setting the waypoint again. It's not a lot unlike doing the budgets where we come with the first budget and then we revise it, you know, 8 times through the year. You know, we need to revise the strategic plan so that, you know, we don't want to change course 180 degrees probably, but you know, maybe want to take a little left or a little right somewhere, you know. So
Well, because you
do you
don't.
agree with that, Ryan?
Yep. Sorry.
Ryan, are you there? Is that kind of what you're thinking along them lines?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful.
Okay. I was just going to say, you don't have any burning issues. You didn't have a referendum fail. You're not in statutory operating debt. You're not in the middle of a building construction project. You're not facing a big fire that you want your superintendent to address the minute they step foot in their new job. But I think those two areas are both really good. We'll craft a question around strategic planning experience and the role of the board and superintendent in doing so. And then we'll use the question about the effect of the pandemic on their understanding of education and student achievement. And then we always ask a third question is, based on the hiring criteria for this district, why are you the best candidate? So you have specific criteria you've identified, and we want them to tell us, based on what you're looking for, why are they a good fit? So there's 3 questions in this application now that when you read through the applications, it should mean a lot more to you because they're answering questions specific to your district. AppleTrack, we used to ask some really generic questions about what's your experience in management and budgeting.
Yeah.
You know,
I remember that one from the last time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So odd
Really
and so
different
boring.
answers.
Anyone could copy and paste an answer on budgeting and management if they Googled it, but these are specific to something that means something to your district. So these will be an opportunity for you to really screen your candidates through a much closer lens than you would if it was just a generic kind of answer anybody could give. So I think these are 2 really good ones. Thank you for coming up with that. I appreciate it.
I have one question for the strategic planning. Could we put some sort of verbiage about how they implemented it?
Implementing it? Yep.
Like example of how they implemented it in their current and former districts.
Great point. I will add something in there about the implementation of a strategic plan. Thank you. That's great. All right, I'm through my agenda. What else do you need to know? What questions do you have about the process? You got a lot done tonight. Congratulations. You made some really great decisions. And I'm now available for as long as you might need for anything else.
I personally have no questions. The only thing I have is I'm going to go back to that. If we decide as a board to negotiate with a superintendent with 1 or 2 people, you know, we have our board training on the 16th, and I urge somebody to decide and do some soul searching, because it is not a job that I would be comfortable doing. So if there's somebody else that would be comfortable with that, I would be very relieved because I do not want that one. So I'm sorry as a board chairman if I'm blowing your tires out on that one, but I'm just going to be real honest. That's something that I would be I'm nervous for it already, and they not asked me to do it, so I would not be comfortable with that. So I'm just going to put that out there. So.
And I want to thank you for that, Randy, because I can't tell you how many times people try to do something that they're just not good at. And I think it's a true sign of leadership when someone acknowledges that someone else is better at something and allows them to step in the spotlight and do that.
There's got to be somebody better than me. There's probably 5 people better than me on this board. So
it can go south really fast when a board chair tries to do things that they're just not equipped to do. And the whole board pays the price for it. So thank you for your honesty and recognizing that. And yeah, if anyone else wants to think about it, it really is just going to be a conversation with your finalists. What are you looking for? Are we far apart? Are we close? What are the details? Do you want a cell phone? Do you need a car allowance? Do you want health insurance? If you don't, do you want pay in lieu of health insurance? It's just kind of that sorting through the big picture stuff. Ultimately, the board does have to sit down and talk about it and iron out the details and come up with a contract you're comfortable with, present it to them. If they want to renegotiate, that's fine. But someone needs to do that talking and the conversation over phone or face-to-face with that candidate. So.
Okay.
Questions from anybody? You got a lot done in 2 hours. We're at 9 o'clock, so you're probably ready to go home. I'll fill Lee in tomorrow at length about our conversation. I'll get the timeline updated and sent to Randy and Russ, and maybe I'll loop Tyra in right away from the get-go.
I was gonna say, if you could probably just, you okay with that, Tyra? If you get put on the job right away, but I mean,
Yep.
that'd be
Okay.
perfect. And then it started already. So.
All right.
If I can get the timeline for the board minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. That was John talking?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Once I'll send it to Tyra to look at, make sure it jives with your notes. Tyra can send it to the full board. And then I do need this confirmed. So if there's a problem with the timeline, you've got to let me know by Friday at noon, because it's going to go public Friday at noon in the brochure. All these dates the times aren't in there, but the dates are all on that brochure. So when I send it up to Tyra, can I still copy the board chair? Randy, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Tyra will be the liaison to everybody else, but I'll copy Randy. So Tyra, you've got backup if you need it. And then Randy, you can assume Tyra is just going to be the liaison to everybody on everything from MSBA.
And Barbara
Wonderful.
did send you my email, so if you didn't.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. I think you guys are ready for a great search. I think you're ready to roll. You'll have this great opportunity over the next few months to work together as a board and to learn to operate without John's guidance as your superintendent. We're excited to work with you. So it'll be very busy for the next couple of days trying to get everything done. And then you'll have a lull until the March 16th date. While applications are being submitted, you don't have much to do but sit around and think about it. But once the interview training is going to take a lot of effort. Reviewing the stakeholder report takes a lot of time. And then once those applications are in after the 22nd of March, it's a whirlwind between March 22nd and April 12th. There's a lot for you to do as a board during that time. So thank you.
When will we get those stakeholder results?
Well, it closes on the 2nd of March, right?
Yeah, something like that.
We have folks that'll be summarizing the comments. It kind of depends. If we can get it done quickly, it depends on how many responses you have. If you have 50 or less, it won't take us too long, maybe 3 or 4 days. If you end up with 300 responses, it's going to take us a while to identify the themes. And in that case, it's more like a week. But Lee can get it to you in plenty of time to review and discuss then on the 16th of March. You'll get it pretty far in advance of that date. But be careful not to talk about it. Even if it's emailed to Tyra and shared with the rest of the board, be careful that you as board members don't start dissecting and discussing the stakeholder report. That board business needs to be conducted at the board table.
That was my following question is, are we wise to not look at it before the 16th, or are we okay to look at it before the 16th?
You're absolutely okay to look at it, just don't talk to each other about it. And that can be hard because there might be some surprises in there. You just don't want anyone thinking that you are conducting board business outside of the public meeting. So we can wait and send it to you in the board packet before the 16th, along with the interview training. You'll get that a day or two before. maybe that works best, is if you get it a day or two before, you have time to read it quick, and then on the 16th, Lee goes through it with you in more detail.
Okay.
Okay?
So,
All right. Well, thank you so much. You guys were great. I'm sure I'll see you again, and you're in really, really good hands with Lee Warren. I'll just tell you that much. I enjoy working with him, and he's a great project lead. So let us know if you need anything else. If you have questions, you can reach out to me, and we'll look forward to seeing what happens next for the Royalton search.
all right. Well, thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Barb.
All right, I'm going to sign off. If you guys have any more business, feel free. Otherwise, you can adjourn and head home as well. So take care, and it's nice to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Well, I don't think we have anything else on our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Was moved by Director Lang and seconded by Director Garretts to adjourn the meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will the Superintendent Phelps call the roll?
Director Bowman,
Aye.
Director Jarrett,
Aye.
Director Hackett,
Aye.
Director Ofsted,
Aye.
Director Lang,
Bye.
Director Roaring.
Motion passes 6-0-0. Meeting adjourned at 9:04. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I look forward to seeing you in person next time.
Bye.
Yeah.
I'm good.